Welcome. If you are a focused learner looking to truly master your understanding of literature, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, our goal is super specific. We are taking Harper Lee's classic 1960 novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, and transforming it into an actionable, high-yield study guide tailored perfectly for your exam preparation. We aren't just going to sit here and recount the plot. We're going to completely dissect the themes, the narrative structure, and the historical context that make this book a Pulitzer Prize-winning masterpiece. We'll be pulling directly from deep literary analysis to give you the precise, critical insights you need to absolutely ace your exams.
All right, let's lay out the syllabus for today's explainer. First, we'll examine the lens, voice, and irony. Second, defining the genres. Third, the mirrors, character foils. Fourth, the message, racial injustice. And finally, we'll decode the Mockingbird symbol.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, the lens, voice, and irony. So to really get To Kill a Mockingbird, you first absolutely have to understand the brilliant structural framework Harper Lee uses. It's a dual narrative voice. On one hand, we've got the 6-year-old Scout. She gives us these simple, naive observations with what critics call tactile brilliance. It's like she's showing us her neighborhood with cinematic fluidity. But, and here's the kicker, layered right over that is the adult Scout. She's looking back, blending a kid's simplicity with a grown woman's grasp of all those complicated, hidden societal motivations and unquestioned Southern traditions. This flashback technique, it's delightfully deceptive. It literally forces you to constantly read between the lines of what the kid actually comprehends. Now, you might be wondering, with a complex setup like that, how on earth do you find humor in a tragedy? I mean, this novel tackles incredibly dark, heavy stuff: rape, violence, severe racial inequality. And yet, one of the most celebrated things about the book is its warmth. It has these hysterically funny moments. How does an author balance those extremes without, trivializing the real trauma? Well, this quote by literary scholar Jacqueline Tavernier Corbin hits the nail on the head. Laughter exposes the green under the beautiful surface. Lee brilliantly uses irony, parody, and satire, all through the lens of a child, to actually demean the ugly societal norms of Macomb. Take Scout's first day of school, for instance. It's hilariously frustrating. Her teacher literally tells her she needs to undo the damage Atticus has done by teaching her to read. To us, it's funny, but really, it's a sharp, ironic critique of a totally flawed education system. The satire mocks the hypocrisy of the society itself. Moving right along to Section 2, defining the genres. For any literature exam, you've got to be able to properly classify the text. And this novel, it comfortably sits right at the intersection of two major literary traditions. First up is Southern Gothic. This is a genre that features grotesque or borderline supernatural elements, outsiders, and deep underlying societal issues. Lee builds this Gothic aura right into the very architecture of the town. Think of the creepy boarded-up Radley house, or Dill's exaggerated, morbid plays about Boo Radley being some sort of phantom. But the sheer genius of Lee's realistic approach is that the true Gothic terror isn't supernatural at all. No way. The real monster is the pervasive, systemic racial violence and the deep-seated prejudices hiding right behind the polite facade of a small Southern town. Now, what's really interesting about this next classification is how the novel also perfectly fits into a second genre, the Bildungsroman. Basically, that's a fancy term for a coming-of-age story, where young people face hard realities and emerge completely changed. For Jem, this means facing shattered illusions. After Tom Robinson's trial, Jem actually compares his experience to being a caterpillar wrapped in a cocoon, waking up to realize his neighbors aren't the wonderful people he thought they were. And for Scout, you can totally read her journey as a feminist Bildungsroman. She starts out as this scrappy tomboy fighting literally anyone who insults her dad, and she emerges on the verge of womanhood with a crystal clear awareness of her potential power and moral standing in her community. All right, let's shift to Section 3, the mirrors, character foils. A fantastic way to analyze the children's coming of age is by looking at how the supporting characters act as literal mirrors for their moral development. Let's map out the kids' evolving view of Boo Radley, because it serves as a visual yardstick for their maturity. Step 1. Back in their innocent, sheltered childhood, he's just a terrifying ghost to be feared and mocked. Step 2. Curiosity starts to replace that fear when they realize someone is secretly leaving them gifts. The carved figurines and trinkets in the tree. And Step 3. When Bob Evil attacks them, Boo actually emerges in the flesh as a real, benevolent human savior who literally carries Jem home. This massive progression from fear to profound empathy, that proves the children's moral growth. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept of character foils.
Unlike a lot of classic literary moral heroes who go off on grand epic quests to slay dragons or topple empires, Atticus Finch's heroic individualism and his dedication to social justice are proven quietly, right at home. Lee highlights his unique integrity by contrasting him with the other fathers in Macomb. We've got Bob Ewell, an abuser and virulent racist who falsely accuses an innocent man just to cover up his own shame. Then you have Mr. Radley, who literally imprisons his own son in a house for 24 years just to protect his family's pride. Lee uses the toxic, flawed masculinity of these other men to highlight exactly why Atticus stands apart as a unique moral sonner. It proves that true courage isn't physical at all, it's moral. Zooming out a bit, let's look at Section 4, the message, racial injustice. At its core, this novel is a staggering examination of racial injustice and the destruction of innocence in the 1930s Deep South. To analyze this effectively for an exam, you absolutely must ground the fiction in historical reality. Scholars point out that Tom Robinson's plight actually mirrors several real-world injustices. There's the infamous Scottsboro Boys case, where 9 black men were convicted on practically non-existent evidence. There's the heartbreaking 1955 murder of Emmett Till, which was a brutal catalyst for the civil rights movement. And even locally, in Harper Lee's own hometown of Monroeville, there was the 1936 Walter Lett case. A black man was convicted of raping a white woman despite grave doubts, and he ultimately died in prison. These historical parallels are absolutely crucial because they underscore the deadly, real-world reality of the Southern caste system Lee is critiquing. Lee also uses incredibly powerful symbolic imagery to drive this message home. Take the famous scene where Atticus has to shoot the rabid dog. It's this tense, almost dreamlike moment where Atticus stands completely alone on a deserted street. Now, this isn't just about a sick animal. Scholars point out that the mad dog represents the rampant disease of prejudice infecting the entire town. Just as Atticus stands alone to kill the dog, he stands entirely alone in that courtroom against the town's anger. He's literally baring himself to fight the rabid racism that completely denies Tom Robinson's humanity. Furthermore, Lee complicates our understanding of this racism by looking at class. It wasn't just one single group responsible for the injustice. The jury that convicts Tom, despite overwhelming evidence that he's innocent, is made up of poor white farmers. However, Lee points out that the educated, moderate white townspeople, the upper crust, are the ones quietly upholding and supporting this racist status quo. She demonstrates how gender and class issues intertwine to greatly complicate the causes of racism, effectively silencing the voices that might actually challenge the existing order. Okay, let's move on and see how this all builds into Section 5, the Mockingbird symbol.
This is the absolute defining motif of the novel. It is an essential piece of any exam essay. You need to know exactly who the figurative mockingbirds are in the text. First and foremost, it's Tom Robinson. He's an innocent man who is carelessly and violently destroyed, shot 17 times while trying to escape, even though it was physically impossible for him to have committed the crime. The second mockingbird is Boo Radley. Instead of a monster, Scout realizes he is someone with a deep inner goodness that is just entirely misunderstood by society. He's a gentle soul who would absolutely be destroyed if the town's gossip were allowed to exploit his heroism.
Miss Maudie explains the symbolism perfectly. She says, "They don't do one thing but sing their hearts out for us." Atticus teaches his kids that while they can shoot all the blue jays they want, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird because they are completely, totally harmless. To kill a mockingbird is the ultimate symbol for the destruction of innocence. It represents society crushing those who are vulnerable, defenseless, and wholly good, which, as we just discussed, perfectly encapsulates both Tom's physical death and Boo's social exile. We're going to wrap up today with this defining quote from Atticus Finch. "You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it." This right here is the novel's ultimate thesis on compassion. As you finalize your study notes, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. In a society deeply entrenched in prejudice, is simply understanding someone else's point of view enough to create justice? Or is empathy merely the first, uncomfortable step toward the moral courage required to actually change the world? Think about that.